I was born without legs, and I never thought it was impossible to be an acrobat or an aerialist or power tumbler or play softball or basketball or volleyball, all against able-bodied athletes. My favorite verse, which actually is what the title of my book was derived from, where the inspiration for my book came from, is Mark 9:23. Everything is possible to the one who believes. I don't do what I do for myself. I do what I do because it's my destiny. It's how God is using me to reach people, to touch people. It's way bigger than me.
Good evening, New Beginning community family. We're so excited to be here tonight. We have a very, very special guest. Jen, I want to ask you something. As we did the radio earlier today, we were talking about your parents that adopted you. And we thought about how amazing these parents are that, when God is trying to orchestrate a plan, He chooses people. And in their obedience, they adopted this precious little baby. And what God has done in your life is amazing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. You kind of said it earlier when we were chatting at lunch that the heroes of my story, of my life, are my parents. And that's absolutely right. I think every time I do a speech or I interview or anything, it's really that they are the meat and potatoes kind of the story, because they didn't have all the certificates or the qualifications and all the stuff that you would think maybe you need to adopt. In fact, all the odds were against them because of that. But God sees our hearts, and they were willing. These are two huge things that I've learned just through talking about my own story and reflecting about my life. And they raised me with this can't isn't part of your vocabulary kind of. It's not just so much a motto, but it's really a way of life. It's a lifestyle. And so they believed the things they said. They really believed that God had purpose through me not having legs. And that was so evident in their actions. So it wasn't just like, oh, honey, God doesn't make mistakes. You were born like this for a reason. It was so much deeper than that, because it was shown every day in the actions.
That is so beautiful, and what a tribute to right parenting, that no matter what your circumstances are, no matter where you're born, what neighborhood you're born, what you don't have, what you do have, that if parents raise their children in a way that you make them believe that anything is possible, what an amazing result of that. Tell us in a nutshell a little bit of your accomplishments. I know there are many.
No, it really is. You're absolutely right. I think it's amazing to me that my parents raised me. They spoke so much life into me.
Yes.
They spoke so much life into me that I didn't even think it was impossible to not have legs and be like, yeah, I want to be a gymnast. I want to be a power tumbler. Tumbling is the flipping and the twisting part of typical gymnastics, right? Like, never 1 second did I think that wasn't possible. I was like, of course it's possible. What do you mean, And so I went on to play softball, basketball, volleyball, all against able-bodied athletes, no prosthetic, no chair, nothing like that. And, even roller skating and, with roller skates on my hands. And in power tumbling, like I said, instead of a square floor, it's a long runway type, and you have different passes. So round off, back handspring, tuck, this and that, And so I competed in that for 4 years and won state championship one year, state champion in my division, then went on to Junior Olympics. And so that's the whole of the United States. It was a big deal. First person with no legs, to ever compete in the sport. Right. And later in life, as a professional, as a performer, acrobat and aerialist. So acrobat, I did professional trampoline performances, and then aerialist is the silk fabric that you see like in Cirque du Soleil. Right. So that's been my professional career for about 11 years. And yeah, again, no one without legs had ever done something like that. And so in the beginning, it was like, we don't want to hire you. We don't want to hire you. We don't know how people are going to feel. We don't know how an audience is going to react, Of course, all this stuff. And it was just too new for people. But I knew I was supposed to do it. And then we got on tour with Britney Spears, featured act all over the world, Staples Center, Madison Square Garden, crazy, 20,000 people live, like wild stuff. And God just blew the doors wide open for, and then it was like, okay, now Jen can perform around the world. It was kind of like really quick, actually.
Jen, you are absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Outside and inside, you are amazing. And your accomplishments speak for themselves. Tell the audience, was there ever a point in your life that you felt that you were cheated by God?
I would say growing up, I was pretty content. I think my parents leveled with me pretty early on about, I knew I was adopted, I knew my biological family was from Romania, and I was pretty confident that they gave me up because I didn't have legs. It was just like, yeah, that's probably right. They, grew up in a different mindset, grew up in communism, grew up with kind of the stigma of culturally and socially of how it would be viewed without legs, right? Just totally different in certain countries. It's kind of hard for Americans to understand, but that's a very real thing. And so, I don't know, I think because my parents were so open from so early, it kind of took this chip, if there were one, right? If there were to be a chip on my shoulder, that took it away. And I saw so much purpose through not having legs. But I think deeper than that, it was not that I was unaware or in denial of not having legs or just refusing it. It was a part of me. I knew obviously it was there, but it was not my identity. And this is relevant for all of us. We can put anything and make it our identity, but nothing should be above being a child of God, period. We have our Instagram profiles and we get like 3 lines, right, to write something and describe our life. Nothing should ever be above that number 1 spot. It's just an identity issue, right? So I think if I would have came into a room and I would have been all about letting you know that I don't have legs and I don't have legs. And by the way, did you not know I don't have legs, right? That's all you would notice about me then. But that would be coming from me. So we can take control over this, right? We have more responsibility than kind of control over that actually than we realize. But I think there was a peace. So I didn't feel cheated because I saw the purpose through that. I really saw it. Like I really in my bones saw that. And there was it's either you believe it or you don't, right? You either believe that God does things on purpose or you think he makes mistakes. There really is no middle ground. There really isn't. Yeah.
That is so amazing. The fact that you saw purpose in everything from the beginning. Now, right now, there are women watching you, Jen, who there's probably that widow that is struggling and grieving the loss of her husband, and she is alone. And perhaps she wasn't raised with dynamic parents like you had. And she's fighting the fact that she can't make it alone. That woman that is verbally or physically abused by her husband or by somebody that she's living with, those that are struggling to make ends meet, those single mothers. What do you tell those women that find themselves in these tremendous circumstances that are so dark and that they think that they can't rise above them? What would you say to those women?
I would say, first of all, I don't have all the answers, and I will never claim to have it all figured out. Okay, I've lived the life that I've lived so far, and that's all I can give from what I know and from what I've experienced. But what I have seen and what I do know is that God is purposeful, and God is purposeful, and there is not one life that is less important or less unique than the other. There is equal value in everybody's life, all right? Equal value. And, we know that the body has different functions. We know that some are the hands, some are the eyes, some are, right? And I think we don't know why some people's lives are different than other people's lives. we kind of just, that's the faith part, right? And I would say that understanding we all have purpose, we all have value, and that being able to put our emotions and our feelings above, or rather, we put it above the Word of God, but if we can put it under the Word of God, and this is so difficult. I'm not going to pretend that that's some simple thing, but I had it happen for me. I came to that moment where it was like I was convicted. It's like, Jen, is the Word of God more important than your feelings, or is it not? You have to make a decision. And then that's a daily decision. That was one of the toughest things I think I ever had to kind of learn, and it was, you have to want it. You have to really want and crave and be hungry to be a child of God, and you have to be okay with all that comes with that. And it really is a giving of your life. It really is.
So there's no quick fix here.
Nope.
There's no quick
Sorry,
fix here.
there is not. No. I'll be real.
But you know, we all have that time or that moment in time where there's a fork in the road, and where it's either we're going to fight it and we're not going to accept it, or there's that total surrender. Can you give us some details about your moment in time when there was total surrender and you doing the purposes of God?
Yeah. Well, kind of what I was alluding to right there, I had a really dark downtime of body dysmorphia. I think that's the most direct way that you can know what I'm talking about. So I was looking in the mirror and I was thinking I looked so fat and so horrible, but I was actually thinner than I had ever been in my entire life, okay? And I was never a person that was affected by peer pressure. I was not the one to be affected by culture, or I was always like, boom, I'm going to do my own thing. I don't care what what's around me. I'm good. But even with all of that, I fell hook, line, and sinker into this whole image thing. I was in the entertainment industry, surrounded by all these acrobats and aerialists with perfect bodies, and it got to me. I mean, it really, I think it got to me even more so because I didn't think it would affect me. And then boom, I'm getting, and then I got very thin, right? So I achieved the goal, so that strength can work against me, and it did. And then it was affecting my whole life. Then I wouldn't go to parties, and where there was food, I would only meet people at coffee shops to only have coffee and tea so I wouldn't be tempted. And I would just rip myself apart in the mirror and just go down this dark rabbit hole if I wasn't super, super thin, and I was already super, super thin, it's a totally ugly place and just obsessed. And so I was so fed up with that. I was so angry at myself because I'm like, that is not me. But the feelings and the emotions were overwhelming because they feel real. But there is a difference between feelings and facts. There just is. Right. Okay, so feeling, fat, disgusting, ugly, reality, thinner than I ever had been in my whole life. Looking awesome, actually. I mean, too thin, but not ugly at all. Actually, worked really hard and then went too far, right? So coming out of that, I had to take practical measures. I covered up my mirrors. I covered them up with beautiful things that brought me joy. I didn't realize how much hate and negativity was coming from that mirror until I covered it up. And then it was like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could look at the mirror and feel so good, And so that was like practical. Then spiritually, I had to sometimes every day speak the truths of God out loud. Yes. Like just fighting. I mean, I had to literally fight for it. It was not easy. And it was not 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, a year. No, it was like well over 2 years. So it was not fast. I think it could have been faster had I surrendered faster, for sure. Didn't have to take that long, But I am a fighter, for better or worse. So, it goes for you or it goes against you sometimes. But then it was the decision. It was the choice. Every day when I wanted to look in the mirror, when I wanted to take a picture and then be like, I hate it, I look horrible, no, not a good angle, this, that, And it was like, okay. So I finally came to like the end of the road and I was like, all right, what this whole obsession is doing, the more time I spend obsessing about my body, is the less time God can be using me for other people to do what I'm supposed to do. And that is selfish. And I was like, dang, Jen, you're better than that. You know?
Yes.
This is not okay. And that's not who you are. And that's not what you believe in. So, like, get it together, you know? And so, but it was that daily choice. It was that denying.
That's so amazing that you took steps, action steps. Mm-hmm. You knew what you had to do, and you did it. You didn't sit there. You didn't wallow in it. You allowed yourself to go, even through the persistence of 2 years, just being consistent and doing what you did, and the results were victorious. Yeah. You know, as women, or even as men, you know, I know there are a lot of men watching, when things happen to us, tragedies happen, we look for explanations, but we know as God's children that we don't live by his explanations, we live by his promises. Amen. Jen, tell us, what are the promises that you hold on to?
I'd say one of the biggest ones is just that he has, I say it so much, but he has purpose in everything. It blows my mind how he is supernatural and divine, but he is also practical. And he cares about these things that we think are even too insignificant to pray about. You know, I never prayed about these things, but maybe in the last 3 to 4 years, I started praying about what I should wear to my events. Like, to me, it would have sounded laughable to pray about something like that, you know, years prior. And I saw, sure enough, like, I would pray in the morning, okay, what should I wear? And then I'd show up to a company or an organization, and they'd be like, oh, that's cool, you planned your colors to match our company. And I was like, oh, did I? Okay, yeah, yes, I did, yeah, of course. You know, and that's the God of details, right? So just knowing that he really is in every step, I think that's encouraging. For me, it is. It's like, wow, he's not just huge. He is huge, and he is mighty, and he is divine, and he is supernatural, and he is all powerful. Yes, but he's also in the small things. Yes, how, like, how does that work? You know, he's so majestic and yet detailed, and actually cares about these things, which I think is awesome. So knowing that he is purposeful and that there is purpose in everything is somehow grounding, and like, we can relate to that. So I think that's awesome for each of us every day. And then knowing that all the struggles that we have here in this broken world, that it will not always be that way. That's the biggest thing that I think can give us hope. We have hope. We have real hope that the lights don't go out. It's not all said and done. That this is the beginning. And that's so hard to imagine, because we're like, but this is where we live. But this is planet Earth. This is, there's so much we cannot understand because we are not God. That's why he's God. And to imagine that we have eternity somewhere else that's like no pain, no sorrow, the golden road, you know, like everything, and 1,000 trillion million times more than we could possibly fathom. That is real hope. I mean, if that's not hope, then I don't know what else is, you know?
That's so beautiful. We live for eternity. We live for eternity. We know that that's coming, and a lot sooner than we think. And that is our hope. That is such a hope. But even now, in this world, regardless of our circumstances, regardless of how dark they are, if you look to him, he will give you the way out. He will give you the way of escape. And he will use your pain to lift you up. He will. I don't know who we would be if life was perfect for us. I don't know what kind of people we would be, what kind of women we would be if we've never gone through anything. But because of our struggles, because of our pain, because of the things that we've gone through, in that dark season in our lives, God is there. And we know him more than we've ever known him because he's been that song in the night to us. He's been there for us. And Jen, I want you to minister to the women. I just love, love, love your spirit. So I'm just going to go ahead and just get out of the way and allow you just to fully minister to the women, not only to the women, but to the men that are watching, that are looking, you know, wanting some kind of revelation from God tonight. And I'm going to allow you to just go ahead and speak to them. Amen?
Amen. Thank you. Such an awesome interview with everybody here. And of course, you guys are all amazing here. And just thank you so much for having me. It's just, I love this place. I hadn't been here, hadn't been a New Beginning, hadn't met the pastors here yet until I think a week ago. And we had lunch, and I was like, man, they're so amazing. And then we had lunch again today, and I was like, I love them even more, you know? I want to come here. And so this is totally led by the Lord, totally led by the Spirit, such a natural fit. And what an amazing, I really just have to give a shout out here to New Beginning, because not like they told me to say it, but I'm saying it, because I just really am so moved by, you guys are a praying church, and this is that moves mountains. And I'm so impressed by the consistency of the praying for over all these years, and just the transformation and the restoration. And so I'm proud to be here I'm so honored that you guys have me here. And that's one of the coolest things for me as a speaker, as a performer. I'm always traveling. I'm always the person that's not from where I am, right? I'm always the person coming in from out of town or out of state or out of country. And you kind of never know what environment you're going to be thrown into, what kind of people, and all the stuff. And so it's such a gift when I go somewhere and it's just right on point. And you know exactly, I was supposed to be here. You know, this is so on point. And it just makes everything flow. And this is certainly that moment. And so I love that I get to meet so many people around the world. I would say that's one of the biggest gifts that God has given me just through traveling the world. I've been to, 23 or 4 or 5 countries at this point. And that's all God. That's all from speaking and or performing. And I think that's just, what a gift, you know. It's shaped me, molded me. People have spoke life into me. You heard me mention that earlier about speaking life, but, you know, you've heard of people say, oh, this was a solo mission, and I got here just because I'm so awesome. And I can tell you that's not me at all. I only am where I am because so many people throughout my whole life have poured into me. My family, of course, as you heard, but beyond that, my community, where I grew up in a really small town in the middle of nowhere in southern Illinois, cornfields and cows, no joke, and quite opposite from LA, the literal opposite. And people were so supportive, like my community, just people, neighbors, and, you know, that knew me, and then my friends at school. People often ask me if bullying was a part of my life, but, you know, we grew up together. I think the people that I was in kindergarten with, we kind of graduated together. So not having legs was just kind of normal for them, and certainly normal for me. But so I was so blessed. I saw how God hand chose my parents, and hand chose the most unlikely people in the middle of nowhere. You don't think of it like that. You think of it maybe more glamorous, right? But it wasn't at all. But I saw that because God sees our hearts, right? He sees our hearts, and he wants us to be willing. So being a speaker, for example, people think I studied and this was my lifelong goal and Jen's dream, and it wasn't. It wasn't at all. I ran away from speaking. I didn't want to be a speaker. God was like, you need to speak. You need to speak. And I was like, nah, I'm good. And I just kept saying no, running away from this, thinking I had it all wrong. My perspective was that, oh, I'm a performer, I'm an acrobat, I'm an aerialist. I love it. I love the hair and the jewels and the costumes and the performing, and I get a microphone for speaking. That's so not interesting, so boring. And just, it felt like somehow being a speaker was taking away from my life. I really believed that. That's why I ran away from it. And I thought, well, that's going to pull me away from performing. And the only thing I ever saw growing up, because again, it's not like we had speakers coming where I lived. I mean, maybe once or twice in my life, in my middle of nowhere, town. And if they were older men with gray hair and a suit and tie, So I thought, I really thought it was boring. I'm like, I'm not older man. I don't have gray hair. That's super boring. And I love fashion and nails and, personality and being real. And I didn't know how that worked as a speaker. And so God really, again, he just had to he went from tapping to like hitting me in the face a little bit, like, girl, you need to speak. Be a speaker. Will you listen to me? And my stubbornness was like, nah, I'm okay. I know better. Yeah, don't try arguing with God. Just a little lesson. It doesn't work. Never works. And he won, of course. But I have to be honest with you. I could tell you I started speaking and my attitude changed and everything was perfect and, but it's not true. I started speaking purely out of obedience because I knew I was supposed to do it. Still didn't have the right attitude at 100%. It was like, okay, well, I'm going to start speaking. Great. Cool. Not performing. Thanks for this boring life. Great. Like, what a horrible attitude I had, right? When I look back, I'm like, what was I thinking? And I remember one day waking up, and I had a speaking event that day, and it was like a light bulb moment, just all at once. And I thought, what? This is a privilege. This is an honor. What am I doing? What was I thinking? Why did I have such a wrong perspective? Nothing else but my perspective changed. Isn't that interesting? How we can do that to ourselves. And I have to share that because so many people have the wrong perspective of me being a speaker. They think like, I studied it for years and it was my plan. It was not my plan. It was not my plan. It was God's plan. And how interesting, because if our hands are never open, it's just a fist, we can never receive what God has for us. We can't. If we're not willing, he can be throwing stuff at us all day long. Doesn't matter. It's just going to bounce right off. And that was a big lesson for me, a big lesson. And again, it was not fast. It took a couple years. And it didn't have to take a couple years. I was just being so stubborn. Like, I could have just opened my hand earlier. Isn't that interesting how we do that to ourselves? All he wants us to be is willing. That's it. Just to open our hands, to be willing to receive what he has. And that comes along with surrender. There's no other way. There's no other way that works. And that was such a lesson for me. And I thought, man. And then I knew I was not supposed to use notes when I was speaking. I knew that I was supposed to let the Spirit lead me every time. Didn't matter if I was speaking for an hour. Didn't matter if I was speaking in front of 10,000 people or 50 people. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is with how much you trust God. It was terrifying to be like, all right, well, I'm going to go up on stage and everyone's waiting for me. I'm just going to rely on the Spirit, But I knew that's how I was supposed to speak. I was convicted. And now, years later, I have to say that has been my number one strength as a speaker. Because the Spirit, it holds me accountable. I can speak good. I have good vocabulary. I can use fancy words, fun stories. But that's not the point. It's, why am I a speaker? Well, I'm speaking because God called me to speak. Because it's not about me. Because it's to reach other people, right? So then if that's the real reason, then I have to give up my fancy words sometimes, and I have to always let the Spirit move. Amen? Amen? Yeah? So it's interesting and relevant because when we've all heard someone say, it's such an honor and a privilege, for me to be a speaker. But when I say it, now you know why I say it, right? Like, there is a lot of meat behind that. There's a lot of history behind me being a speaker where I really, truly am honored and privileged to be a speaker, that God gave me a life. All these stories that you've been hearing about my life, the way my life is, the way it's been, I didn't do it. I didn't create myself. I didn't create my life. I don't have that power. And this story, my life, is meant to be shared. That's the whole reason I'm here, all right? That's the whole reason I have a book. That's the whole reason I'm a speaker. That's the whole reason I do interviews. That's the whole reason I do performances. It's just for him to show off and be like, I can do a lot with someone's life. Just look what I did here. That's why I share it. It is not about me being on a stage holding a microphone, folks, just so you know. That's not it. It's really not about me. And that It's not about being on a stage or on the cover of a book. That is just to project what God has done, to share what he's done, to show like everything really can be and is possible when you believe. Like that's that key, right? Can you imagine when my parents adopted me, they took me to a team of doctors, well-respected, huge hospital, and they examined me, and they said, matter-of-factly, she will never sit up on her own. End of story, period, that's it, done deal. She's just not going to sit up on her own. And in fact, she's going to be confined to this bucket device. I don't know why, this terrible name. And because it will hold her upright in the front and upright in the back. Now, just stop right there for a minute and think, put yourself in their shoes. If that was you, if I was your kid, okay? You basically have one of two roads to go down, right? Choices. I'm all about choices. And you can feel very sorry for yourself and say, wow, and feel sorry for me. Man, this is terrible. I mean, I've adopted her, and now she's like going to be stuck with us in our house the rest of our life and not going to do anything, and she's stuck in this thing, and she can't sit up on her own. And I mean, well, yeah, that's her future because that's what the doctor said. And just give up, and or accept it. Or, big or, right? We can believe that there is always more, that God is bigger, the God we serve is bigger, is stronger, that there's always another way, that we do not have to roll over and play dead and accept only one answer that someone who doesn't believe in God tells you. That we don't have to, we can reject or we can accept. We have that choice. No one's forcing you to accept what someone says. We should just accept what the Word of God says. That's it. Like, again, it's that number one slot on our profile, right? The number one place in our lives of what's the most important to us. And thankfully, my dad said, I mean, both of them, but my dad was more the outspoken one. He said, there is no way that's her future. There is just like no way, reject it, period, flat out, there has to be more for her. Like, done deal, all right, thanks for your opinion, but we're moving on. And they did. And they went to a second hospital with different doctors. And my dad is, very direct, to the point. I love that about him. And he met the doctor at this different hospital now. And he said, okay, before we get any further, just answer me one question. Will she ever be able to sit up on her own? Like, that's all I want to know. And this doctor looked at him with all the confidence in the world, and he said, Mr. Bricker, she's going to do things that are beyond your wildest imagination. She's going to do things that you never dreamed possible. And he said it like that, just like that. How night and day different, right? Two different doctors, two different hospitals, two totally different opinions, outcomes. How different would I be right now, today, if my parents would have accepted the first set of doctors? Very different. Very, very, very different. Who knows how I would view myself, right? How I would, most likely, my guess is that I'd be extremely codependent. Whereas growing up with my family, they made me so independent, just naturally, right? And it's like, again, they were not the most educated. They did not have the most money. They did not have all the experience in the world. In fact, the odds were very much against them to adopt me. There were 299 couples. 299 couples on a waiting list to adopt me. I mean, like, it's cool to be that popular, right, as a baby? That's cool. But that is wild how God works. I mean, so practically what that would have looked like is 299 different future Jen Brickers. Like, this is so crazy to think about, how God works. So different ways, of course, depending on the family I was raised with, different ways I would view the world, certainly different ways I would view myself, different ways I would view not having legs. Absolutely, my goodness. I could have been with somebody who was either, left or right extreme of like, yeah, maybe keep her away, keep her in the house, keep her afraid of everything, or make me feel like an outcast, or, all these different scenarios. We could go on and on about that. But that's real. That's a real thing. And so how amazing. It's like when you read the Bible, God does this all the time. He always uses the unexpected because he can show off. And then you can only have an option, basically, to say, yeah, that was only God, because that was definitely not me. You know what I mean? I love how he does that. It's so cool. Because people often can, I don't know how to say it, sensationalize how my parents were. So they'll ask, oh, wow, so who did your parents study in raising you? What books did they read? How did they come up with this way of raising you? And I just have to laugh because I'm like, no, you don't know my parents. Like, you don't get it. They're so salt of the earth, good old country folk from the middle of nowhere, just simple, common sense people, just that they are not those people. So I have to make sure you get the image of how they are. They were literally just willing. My mom had 3 boys, always wanted a baby girl, couldn't have kids after having 3 boys, and knew in her bones that she was supposed to have 4 kids. Didn't give up praying for a baby girl for 10 years. Didn't know how, didn't know when, didn't know anything. Just like, I know that I'm supposed to have a baby girl. Okay. And then didn't stop praying or believing or waiting for that day to come for 10 years. This is wild for me because I'm like Miss No Patience over here. So this is, crazy for me. And one day she heard about a baby girl born with no legs through her friend who was also looking to adopt. And it was like she just heard, baby girl, born with no legs. Oh, I'll take her. Like I was up for sale. I guess I kind of was up for sale. And so it was, never saw a picture of me. She never saw a picture of me. I don't even know how that works. How does that work? How else can we say, how can you say that's not God? Right? Like, this is how he works, though. This is not just my life. I mean, everyone has access to that, to this supernatural, divine, like I spoke about. God is supernatural. He is big. He is divine. He is like mind-blowing when you surrender, if you're willing and open that hand, okay? And he certainly blew my parents' minds. So they were in their 40s already, which is now common. Yes, back then wasn't common to adopt, especially. You were like a little too old, to adopt at that point. And already had boys that were 10, 12, and 14 years old. Also not really favorable. They wanted more closer in age siblings, right? Now that's totally different, but not then. Totally all the odds against them. Again, never fostered, never adopted, nothing. This is insane to me. And they sat my brothers down individually at the time, 10, 12, and 14 years old, okay? Set them down by themselves and started asking them questions like, well, how would you guys feel about having a sister in the home with no legs? Practically, what would that look like? How would you feel about it? What if your friends came over? What if they had a problem with it? Things like this, right? Started throwing real life scenarios at them. Can you believe? I can't believe, and I've told the story a million times. Still can't believe it. They said the same thing individually as teenage boys. They said, if they don't like her, if they have a problem with her, then I don't want them in my life anyway. What? What teenage boys say that? Who does that? Okay, maybe if it's like their best friend, right, that they knew, that they know, that they've grown up with, or their mom or dad or something. But they never even saw a picture of me. No one still at this point had seen what I looked like, hadn't met me, nothing. How do you go to bat and stand up for someone you've never met, that you've never seen a picture of? This is God doing his finest. You know, like just blowing our minds. I mean, this is one example. I could be here until tomorrow telling you about my life. There's just never enough time, for real. Like, there's so many stories. Even when I speak for an hour, it never is enough. There's so much. People ask, like, so Jen, when have you seen the hand of God in your life? And I'm like, well, when have I not seen the hand of God in my life? I mean, he was moving before I was even in this family. You know, all this huge part of my life was really the very beginning before I even came into the family. And then the way they raised me, so they adopted me, right? And it was so natural, the way they raised me. It wasn't like they made some grand decision to be these amazing humanitarian parents and we're going to raise our daughter to be so incredible. No, they just said, why wouldn't we raise her the same way we raise the boys? Well, you're not going to make any excuses. If you want to do something, you work hard, you figure it out, you put your mind to it. Yep, you might have to do little things different, but doesn't matter. And if you're not working for it, then you must not want it bad enough. So, period. I mean, it was really simple. And I like that, you know? I really like that. And when injustices happened to me, when things like, they fought for me when I was younger. They showed me how to be independent and stand up when it was right. Not be argumentative, not be disagreeable, not be difficult. That's not what I'm saying. But when you are a person with no legs, but you also happen to be an athlete and do all these things that are just people aren't used to, you know, you don't really fit in a box. And so people don't know what to do with you, you know? And so I experienced that kind of thing. And my parents were there was such conviction, you know? There was such conviction to protect me, to stand up for me, to fight for injustices that were true injustices, you know? Like pick your battles kind of thing. But that was so good for me to see. And in school, I'll give you an example quickly. There was an aide, this woman. My school was really old, so there was no elevator, there was no ADA anything. Give me a break. Like, I grew up with, this school was built in 1912, so no elevators, nothing, okay? And so I would just go up and down the stairs. I'd park my wheelchair at the bottom, hop out, walk up and down the stairs, you know, like everybody else. And then everyone starts freaking out, like the school staff. Well, what if she gets her fingers stepped on? And, because, you know, when the bell rings and, like, it's mad chaos for 3 to 5 minutes and people are going from the first floor to the fourth and second to the fourth, you know, that kind of thing. And so I get their point, I get their concern, but then they're like, okay, we're going to give her this aid, and you're going to leave class a little early, skip the rush, she's going to carry your bags, and that sounds innocent, sounds harmless, actually sounds very helpful. So, okay, all right, we'll give her a try. I never really wanted it, but, you know, and I'm in second grade, right? So I'm still a little fiery Jen at this point. And never really changed, I guess. And so we're like 2 weeks into this aid situation, and it gets so extreme that I can't even just run out the door to go to the bathroom by myself. That's where second grade Jen like drew the line. I was like, that's it. I'm over this lady. She's got to go. Like, this is, you know. But my parents, of course, they saw the bigger picture behind this. So my dad, like, draws in the whole school, principal, superintendent, everybody, sits down and makes a meeting, and he's like, okay, like, we are raising her to be independent, and now what you're all doing, I know you have great intentions, but this is so the opposite of what we're trying to do here. Like, you're really trying to make her codependent on this person and give her this bubble life situation where everything's catered to her, and that's not reality. Like, that's just not the way it works in the real world. So we're trying to prepare her, you know, to be an adult one day. And that's just not, we don't like that. So you got to get rid of this aid. And they actually fought my parents on that. Isn't that interesting? Because they're like, but we're trying to, like, there's people who are fighting for these things that have less of a need than you. Why don't you take what we're trying to give you? I don't understand. Don't you want the help, you know? And they said, yeah, but that's actually harming her. Like, this is not helping her. So it seems innocent on the outside. Isn't it interesting to think that maybe everything, or let's say anything, something that makes our life easier might not actually always be what's best for us. Isn't that an interesting thing to kind of think about, pray about, meditate on, because it's really counterculture. Everything is just to make our lives easier. Everything. Let's just put ourselves in a box, live in this nice, neat, perfect little world where everything is just the way we like it. But that is actually not loving, because it's not, because it's not reality. And then it just becomes all about us, right? That's really the bottom line. And thankfully, my parents saw that. We finally got rid of the aide, and I was like, yes, finally we got rid of her, Now I can do what I want to do. And guess what? I figured it out, and we all figured it out. Didn't lose any fingers, Got a backpack that I could just put on myself, take up the stairs, left the chair at the bottom, and when I got to high school, we had multiple levels, even more, so I had 2 wheelchairs. So I'd put one on the ground level, put one in the higher level, and then the high level, I just used no chair. It was like 1 class per semester, right? And, people who have legs don't walk on each other up the stairs. You know what I mean? You just kind of make a distance for someone and you walk up the stairs. You know what I mean? So we figured it out, which is teamwork, which is community, which is relevant for all of us, right? And I can't say enough of how important that is to just kind of maybe let somebody figure it out, right? Including yourself. Even if it's, well, I don't know, I've never done this, I've never seen this, I don't know how this works, that's fine. That happens to me too. I had to figure all of these things out in sports. It's not like I was the star in volleyball on the net, blocking the balls, right? Okay? Let's be real, that was not my strength, okay? I was better in the back when the ball dropped low because I was already low. I was fast. Like Speedy Gonzalez. That was me. And so I had to tweak things. Yes. I had to do things a little differently. Yes. Some things were harder for me. Absolutely. But I think the difference is simply that, what's so popular that you see on the internet with me is this can't isn't part of your vocabulary, okay? That's powerful. Yes. But it's not powerful if there's no action behind it. And it's not just a saying, it's a way of life. So I think what was so powerful with my parents, it wasn't that they said that, it was that they lived that. This is completely different. Words without action are totally empty and powerless. Zero. Means nothing if you don't actually follow up on what you say through life, through actions. So I saw that growing up. Meaning they allowed me to try everything, meaning they spoke life into me, meaning they didn't say, how are you going to do that? You don't have legs. You're really small. Isn't that going to be dangerous? No one's ever done that before. No, that's speaking negativity. That's speaking death into somebody, especially a child who's excited and has hopes and dreams and wants to be, a fairy one day and have wings the next day, right? You just have imagination. You have creativity. We all have that. Somewhere along the way, unfortunately, somebody tries to squash that. God doesn't try to squash that. He wants you to believe in the surpassing and an exceeding abundance of what he can do, bigger than our imagination, right? So I saw that back to my parents of just allowing me to do things, of speaking life into me. Yes, everything is possible. So the can't isn't part of your vocabulary. The lifestyle I was talking about is that the one thing that unites us all around the world, everyone, everywhere, is struggle, is obstacle. So I think where that saying / lifestyle becomes powerful is that it's just, I think where you win or lose the battle is when you see the mountain, because we all have them, right? So when we're faced with that mountain, do we look at it and say, okay, I know that it's possible to get over it, around it, or through it. I don't know how yet. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't really know. But I know that it's possible. Or, see, that's that. You've won it already. You've won the battle. Or losing the battle would be looking at the mountain, deer in headlights, paralyzed, and running away, or never moving. And that's where we win or lose the battle, I think. And that's where I think the can't isn't part of your vocabulary. That's what I think it looks like practically. So it's like, okay, maybe I go over the mountain. Maybe this situation, I'm going to have to go around it. Or maybe I'm going to have to keep chipping away day after day after day after day after day to get through it. Like just going through the mountain. Because the one thing I can tell you, and I know I have to wrap this up, but the one thing that should encourage you, because it encourages me every day, every country I've been to, it's relevant. Everywhere in the world, this is relevant. Is that every single one of us were born with talents and gifts and abilities and purpose. Ooh, I love me some purpose, Love it. Because it's so, like, it brings meaning, right? It's a reason to wake up in the morning. Every life has value. Every life has equal value. Can you say equal value? Yes. I'm going to say it one more time. Equal value. So think of someone quickly who you believe has so much influence, so much power, they reach so many people or impact, okay? Or they have so many followers, whatever it is. Realize truly that through because you do have many somethings to offer this world, otherwise you wouldn't be here. You have purpose, okay? You have so much purpose, so much value, meaning in your life, and you offer tremendous things to the world, okay? And that person you're thinking of, you have equal amount of value in your life as that person. It looks different, yes. You might not have all the followers. You might not be on a stage ever. You may never speak on stage. You may never be on the cover of the book. You may never be on TV. Totally fine. Doesn't matter. God's going to use you anyway. Just as important, just as powerful. Yeah, but Jen, people say, but my life is boring, and I don't have a stage. I don't have a platform. I can't make an impact. I'm going to say I disagree, because you have family, you have friends, you have coworkers. You have people that are in your life every single day. That is your platform. That is your stage. And this is your opportunity, our opportunity to make an impact, because people are watching you. You don't have to acknowledge it for it to be true. People are watching what you do and what you don't do. So it's just, when you realize that that's true, then there's a responsibility that comes with that. Then there's an action that needs to be taken, right? I know, and now you can't unhear it, so now you know, right? Now you know. I'm not going to apologize. And so, but that should motivate you, because that's exciting. That, like, I can touch someone's life. You can not only touch someone's life, you can change someone's life. And in fact, you were made for that. We were made for that. So it is not for the special people in the world that are just made to motivate and inspire. It's for everyone. We are all made to motivate and inspire and change someone's life through what God has given us, through Him working through us, through willingness and surrender. This is for everyone. And I know it looks different, because some of you are teachers, some of you are parents, some of you run the home, some of you are athletes, whatever. We could go on and on and on and on. And that's good. That is essential. That is has to be that way, because you can reach somebody that I can't reach. I can reach somebody that you can't reach. Someone over there can reach someone that neither of us can reach, right? That is why God does that. So we need to celebrate the diversity, not be jealous of it, not try to want what that person has, and just be like, you know what? And wholeheartedly, the key is believing it, of course. Because I can't believe for you. Your family can't believe for you. Your pastor can't believe for you. Only you can accept what God has said as supreme, as authority, or you can reject it. Period. Right? So, do you believe that everything is possible? That is my question. Do you believe that there is value in your life? Do you believe that God has a purpose for you in your life? Do you believe that you also were made to motivate and inspire? This will change your life if you believe that. That I can tell you. What I can guarantee you is that God will blow your mind if you can daily be in the Word, daily be in communication with Him, and daily make that surrender and that choice to put Him first Not easy, not fast, not a quick fix, but 1,000% worth it. Worth it more than anything else. That I can guarantee you. God bless. Thank you.